Hey, Dave here. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, this is Cracking Code with Dave, where I go over mostly Swift programming and how to make apps for the iPhone. So here we are in Developing Swift Explorations, Apple's new book for CIS 150 AB, and on page 45 there's this word games thing. So let's go through this together. I haven't seen this before, so let's do it together. It says you've learned about strings and variables, and in this lesson we're going to challenge your peers to play a word substitution game that results in funny stories. My guess is it's probably like Mad Libs or something like that. If you're old like me and you're familiar with Mad Libs, to get started, open wordgames.playground from the resource file. So the resource file is on page 11 of the book, and I've downloaded it already. And I'm looking for something that's called word games. Yep, here it is. I'm gonna go for our class. We have to rename. To rename a file, you just click on it and then hit enter. And I put a preface in there with my last name. That's just so when I submit the homework assignment, we know who it's from. The playground exercise is just a way for us to experiment with creating some code. When you actually make an app in Xcode, it's an Xcode project. And I'll show you how to do that later in the class. But for now, we're just learning Swift. And in this playground, you'll use your knowledge of values, constants, and strings to create fun word games. If you don't have knowledge of values, constants, and strings, be sure to read through the book right now, by the way, the first part at least. And I'll tell you a little bit about that stuff too. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to make, I don't know if you're old like me, there's something called a Mad Lib. And it's like a sentence or a paragraph. So basically you insert little words, and then when you read the sentence back, it says something funny. So anyhow, they give you some coding hints here. So they show you how to declare a property. This is a constant because it starts with let. And a constant property is basically just a nickname. So like it's a way to store a value. So you're storing this string in this case into hard to read string constant. So basically you're storing all of this text is now like a nickname that's called this. So if you want to print all this text, all you have to do is print out this word here, and it prints it out. Now notice real quick that it starts with a lowercase letter and then they capitalize as needed. So that's called camel case, and we'll be wanting you to declare your properties using camel case. So don't declare your properties starting with a capital letter. Give it a lowercase letter to start with. And then they show you some fancy stuff, like if you create a string using 3 quotation marks, then you can add extra line breaks inside of it. That's cool, but this is the important part here. This is called string interpolation, and this is where you would insert the verb or the noun or whatever. Here, let me just skip to the next page here and show you how it's done, because it looks like what they want you to do is basically just to make it happen. Just do your word, what do they call it? Word game. So I'll show you how they want you to do the word game here. I've actually already created one. I'm going to create another one from scratch just so you get the feel for it. And they do want you to create like several of them. So it's like what? There's like game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They want you to do this 5 times. That's maybe a little excessive, but you know, it's homework. Sorry. So okay. I'm just going to call this my game 2 sentence equal. And let's say the sentence is just going to be, Dave walked over to his chickens and gave them chicken scratch. Or let's give them hot dogs. Okay, so there's a sentence. And so you'll see I've declared it here using camel case. I don't know that I like the number in there, so I'm going to rename it TWO, my game 2 sentence. Okay, fine. So to make a game out of it, let's take some of these words out and make them where you can change them. So first I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to say let name equal Dave. Okay. So now down here where it says Dave, I can do slash parentheses. It's a slash open and close parentheses, and then just put name in the middle there. And so now when you go to print, I hit print and then parentheses, my game 2 sentence. Now at the bottom here, if your Xcode is working, I had to restart Xcode because sometimes this stalls out and you have to hit stop and start, and I don't know. But Dave walked over to his chickens and gave them hot dogs. See, it changed it. So if I change this to Sally up here, then it should say Sally walked over to his chickens and gave them hot dogs. Oh, notice the pronoun here. So maybe under here we've got to do let my pronoun equal, and in this case it's her. So now instead of Dave walked over to his, we're going to put the correct pronoun for Sally. Walked over to her chickens and gave them hot dogs. Okay, so that's not very fun yet. So let's take chicken out and make it let animal equal chicken. Let's just do animals so we know it's plural. So instead of chickens, let's make them rabbits. And now let's put slash parentheses in there and then rabbits in the middle. I mean animals. So you'll see it's storing the property of rabbits in animals, and now anytime we call animals, it's going to insert rabbits there. Sally walked over to her rabbits and gave them, and then let's do the last one will be food. So this is going to be called food. Now let me show you something that you can do. If you type food down here, let food equal, and then I'm going to make it sausage or something. Now you'll see it's not happy with that. It crashes, right? And you're like, why is it crashing? Well, the reason is because you didn't declare this property before you tried to call it up here. So Playgrounds works kind of like top to bottom. So it gets down to this point and it's like, what the heck are you talking about with this food? So make sure you declare your properties above when you try to use them. So it's got to be on the line before you try to use them. Sally walked over to her rabbits and gave them sausage. And this, I believe, is all that each of these assignments wants, is you to create some properties up here and then to insert them using string interpolation down below. Now, let me show you something that I found out. This is like the advanced lesson now. I wanted to make these changeable so I could change them. So I changed this to var, which makes it mutable, means you can change it. So there's two ways to declare a property. It's either let or var. Let is like it's going to be constant, it's going to stay there, and a var is changing. I even changed this one to a var too. And I usually start with a let statement, and if it needs to be a var, the next code will tell you, and then you change it to a var. But I changed those to a var because I wanted my name. So let's say I changed my name to equal Dave, and I'm going to change my pronoun to my pronoun equals his. And now I try to print this again down below. So watch this. Sally walked over to her rabbits and gave them sausage. Sally walked over to her rabbits and gave them sausage. It's the same thing, right? Check that out. Isn't that crazy? So I changed the pronouns here. Why didn't this property change? Well, when you declare a string, it's not a dynamic property. So it's actually not going to update until you declare it again. So I could take this whole section here. So I don't have to declare my game2 sentence again, but I'm calling it again down here and then reassigning the new pronouns below. And you'll see now it's updated. So I just wanted to point that out, that if you make this a variable and try to call it again, then it's not going to update. It's going to store it until you redeclare it. This kind of looks a little bit weird to me. And what I would probably end up doing if it were me is I would make this whole thing a function. We're going to learn about functions later. A function is a block of code that executes, or that you can execute, I should say. So you can call, execute, call, whatever. So later we'll learn about functions, and if you had this in a function, then anytime you call the function, it would update. But in this case, in Playgrounds, just so you know, if you, so once again, if you change the property above and try to redeclare or try to print the statement again, it's printing the stored property up here. And it's not updating after that until you tell it to update after that. Okay, that's all I got for this assignment. You have to go through and create a bunch of those, so have fun doing that. And I'll catch you in the next video.